Hi, I'm Lisa Birnbach for Howdini. If the theme song to your relationship is "The thrill is gone," you're not alone. Most couples find their sexual appetites get a little anorexic sometimes. Here to help us figure out what it means and what to do about it is couples therapist Rachel Sussman. Hi, Rachel.
Hi, Lisa.
So does every couple go through the sexual blahs?
I think in a long-term relationship, at some point you're going to see a little bit of a dip in the scale in the sex life department.
And does that mean that there's a big underlying problem, or simply it's life?
It doesn't always mean there's an underlying problem, but it can mean there's an underlying problem.
How often should a good couple be engaging in lovemaking?
Well, I did read a substantial study that was out last year that said in a long-term relationship, 2 to 3 times per week of lovemaking is considered normal and average.
Well, how does that strike you?
I think that each couple needs to have their own rhythm, and I think if it's a couple that both people are very hot, very red, very sexual, 2 to 3 times per week could be a nice average. But in a couple that's a little more low sexual, perhaps 1 to 2 a week could be a very nice number.
What is the basic cause of sexual problems in a relationship? Could it be a chemical thing? Or does it mean that your husband or your wife is really not into you?
Well, there could be a lot of different reasons for a sex problem, Lisa. You know, when people come to see me and they say, we're having sex problems, it's very important, either in my office or in your home, to tease out, are you really having a sex problem, or are you having an emotional problem, a relational problem that's manifesting itself as a sex problem?
Do you think couples can have a good and honest relationship and not make love very often?
I think, again, it depends on the couple. If you're a cool couple, a couple where both people have low sex drives and sex has never been important for either of you, I think that's fine. But oftentimes where problems come in is when we have sex drives that aren't compatible. Someone is a highly sexual person and someone is a low sexual person.
And can that information only come out about a person after you've been together a long time?
Well, one would think in theory that could come out earlier in the relationship, but if the relationship is good, and we all know the statistics about how the first year out, you know, the hormones are flowing and
Marvin Gaye is playing in the background all the time.
Absolutely.
Right.
But you know, so once that time sort of starts to erode, that's when these problems start to really, you know, lift their nasty heads, and we realize at that point that perhaps there is something, you know, going amiss in the relationship.
When should a couple actually take that step of going to see a therapist, which could be hard for them? I mean, I'm sure that in the beginning, and I know this from when I was married, you think you can live with it and it's just going to be a short-term problem.
Well, I think the key is if you've really tried communicating with your partner, you've tried to work it out on your own, you've tried to come up with some interventions that haven't worked, you're feeling frustrated, you're getting upset about it, you're feeling rejected, it's affecting your self-esteem, that's the time to call in a professional.
And if a professional can't help, does that mean the relationship is doomed?
Well, that's a really interesting question. You know, a good professional will really work with a couple on this or any problem, and they'll be very straight with you whether they think they can't help. And if they can't help, the proper professional should be able to refer you on to a doctor if they think it's a medical problem, a sex therapist if they think it's completely a sexual problem, or if there's underlying emotional problems, if there's any abuse, that will come up and be discussed at that moment.
To sort of put a fine point on it, do you think your sex life is a barometer of the rest of your relationship?
Put it this way, good sex or sex that's agreeable to both parties is one of many ingredients that make a strong, healthy relationship. And the lack of it or problems in that area really can tend to be a barometer for something going off.
Are there certain kinds of couples who are most susceptible to sex problems?
I often hear and see young couples who have had a child, who are pregnant, had a child, or having a second child. That tends to be a time where sex can go off track.
Okay, last question. You haven't had sex for a month. You haven't had sex for 6 months. You haven't had sex for, I think it's been a year. When should you really be alarmed?
You should be alarmed when you're starting to feel that something's wrong. If you're realizing that you're not having sex, maybe you're missing sex, maybe you're not missing sex, which could be a problem also, that's a great indicator and a great time to sit down with your partner and say, hey, something seems to be a little off base here. Can we talk about it and see what's going on and see what we can do together as a team to get this back on track?
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, Lisa.
For Howdini, I'm Lisa Birnbach.